You don't need magic to disappear for a while, because Firestone tires were built for ticking off mile markers. Firestone Destination LE3 tires for 70,000 miles of exploring. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Andrew Firestone is the great-grandson of Harvey S. Firestone, the founder of the Firestone Tire Rubber Company. Andrew's last name appears on signs in tire stores all around the world. But it wasn't until the early 2000s when Andrew began to search into his Firestone roots after rising to fame on Season 3 of The Bachelor. Since then, Andrew has developed a love and appreciation for the tire industry and the Bridgestone-Firestone company and its brands. Today, Andrew continues his great-grandfather's legacy as an entrepreneur, founding his own development company in the hospitality industry. Welcome to Johnny G and Friends. I'm Johnny G, and on today's podcast, we're joined by my good friend Andrew Firestone, co-founder of Stone Park Capital in beautiful Santa Barbara, California. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Johnny, it is so good to see you, buddy. It has been too long, and you're just as beautiful as I remember. They must have a great editing and filter on this camera because you still look great.
Oh, yeah. Well, the tall blonde does my makeup before we start, you know. Hey, Andrew, we met in the early 2000s after your stint on Season 3 of The Bachelor. I mean, how did you even get involved in that?
You know, that was a weird thing. It wasn't anything that I had tried out for. They'd actually, ironically, called my brother first, thinking it was me. And he said, well, that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. However, he was married with 4 kids at the time, so didn't think that his wife would appreciate him going on a dating show. But for me, as a 26-year-old at the time, it seemed like a pretty interesting adventure. And that was very early on in the nascent years of reality TV. So I gave it a shot, and what a crazy adventure that was.
You know, I still was telling some friends the other day who I haven't talked to for a while, and they said, how you doing your podcast? I said, I'm going to lead off with Andrew Firestone, rather than saying the great-grandson of Harvey Firestone. They say, oh, the guy that was on The Bachelor.
Yep, that's yeah. Sorry to my family here, but that unfortunately got the most amount of headlines.
Oh, great. So, Andrew, I'm going to show you a photograph. This is a very famous photograph of 3 legends: Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and your great-grandfather, Harvey Firestone. So tell me, growing up, what did you know about the relationship of these 3 inventors?
Yeah, so, that Harvey was my great-grandfather, my father's grandfather. And growing up as a Firestone, you obviously are aware of the legacy of Firestone and the business and all the rest of it. But I was always more interested in the man and what drove him as an entrepreneur, an innovator. And those 3 guys were there at such a critical inflection point of this country's history in terms of, revolutionizing the way that people did things, everything from travel to how they lived to how they did commerce. And those guys were pioneers. And I think it's just a really cool relationship that they had of not just mutual understanding, but I think mutual respect for what one another were doing. And that brought them together. And I can only imagine those campfire talks, those fireside conversations they must have had. I mean, they were so far ahead of their time. And what a blessing it is for our country. And, for me as a great grandson, those are big shoes to fill.
I mean, I can see him at the campfire. Henry and Harvey are saying, so, Tom, how did you come up with this light bulb idea, Yep. And then it's just crazy.
One of my favorite stories, and I have this picture somewhere, they had one of the early RVs, and these guys would go camping together, and they would go out in the woods, and they would talk and hang out and eat and probably just share ideas. And they had an old converted Ford that they turned into a sleeping wagon. And again, to be a fly on the wall on one of those fishing trips would have been just absolutely amazing.
Oh, just great stories. So in 1947, William Clay Ford married Martha Firestone. So, Andrew, recently I was talking to Bill Babcock, who is owner of this publication. So he's sort of like my boss at Tire Review. And he told me that his dad attended that wedding at the Episcopal Church in Akron, Ohio, and that William Clay Ford gave all of his groomsmen a gift. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I gave my guys cologne. What did you give your guys for groomsmen gift?
Groomsmen gift, I think I gave them a little too much tequila and then the ensuing hangover. That was their gift for putting up with me and being there at my wedding. They didn't get anything very fancy, unfortunately. Well, William Clay Ford, according to Mr. Babcock's father, gave all of his groomsmen a brand new Ford vehicle with Firestone tires on there. Did you know anything about that story? I hadn't heard that story, but that is incredibly generous, and I want to go to that wedding next time. I agree. So I remember, I'm going to go back now. I remember sitting in my office in Nashville, Tennessee, when Chris Carboyak, who was heading up PR at the time, said, I got Andrew Firestone on the phone and he wants to talk to you. Now, for my listeners, this was shortly after the Ford Firestone recall, the largest recall in the history of the tire industry. And you said to me four simple words: how can I help? Yep. First of all, Andrew, I want to thank you for calling me 20 plus years ago, because at the time the company had our backs up against the wall, and we needed that injection of two people. My good friend Mario Andretti said, how can I help? And then Andrew Firestone said, how can I help? So why, Andrew, why did you pick up the phone and call me? You know, that's a multi-layered question, but the simplest answer was having grown up as a Firestone and knowing the legacy of the business. I really want to know the people behind the business. And it's funny because people like you, though not blood relation, I think are the legacy and what carried the torch for Firestone for all those years. And, you know, it's those people that were, you know, there on the front lines in the business. And that I was more interested in that. I was more interested in knowing your story and what your relationship with the company was, rather than some executive. And, you know, knowing your storied history in all the years, and you started busting tires once upon a time in a shop, all the way to being the legend that you became within the tire industry, and mostly for Firestone. That was what I was gravitating towards. Of course, you know, the executive types and the Mario Andretti, of course, so much respect for him. But really, it was the people that lived and breathed and earned their living with Firestone that I was more curious about. And as a young entrepreneur myself, I was curious as what was the magic formula? What has allowed this company to last? Why are there so many Firestone stores still today? Why are there so many millions of tires on the road today? When business comes and goes, brands come and go. What is that magic thing? And what I came to realize with all my time spent with you, it was the people. And it was the people that were keeping that story alive, knowing the history of the people behind Firestone tires. And that's what I wanted to learn about. Yes, sir. Yeah, the relationships that those people, all my team, everybody at the company worked very, very hard on. So when we had our backs up against the wall, we never lost one dealer, Andrew. Never lost one dealer. Everybody stood up and fought for us. So again, I thank you for coming out. I remember I took you through Tires 101, and oh, you did. Kind of went through A to B, and we had a blast for about 3-4 days, and then put you back on an airplane, and then you said, okay, let's go to work, and you ended up spending I don't know how many days a year on the road in Vegas and in Dallas, Chicago at warehouses, at Indy 500, and Nashville. I mean, you were all over. Wherever we needed you to go, you went, my friend. I really appreciate that. No, it was a great way and kind of an organic way for me to get in connection with a piece of my family history that I never really had. So my father, he worked for the tire company for 12 years. And actually, I got a little something here. I got a jacket that he wore. Oh, I love it. At the 1963, I don't know if I can see it there, Woo-hoo. Southern 500. And it was won, I just looked it up. I meant to check my notes, but it was won by a character named Fireball Roberts. Won the Southern 500 run at Darlington it was a Ford engine, Firestone tires, and this was my dad right there. That was his jacket. So this is an old school Firestone racing. And part of, one of the other characters that I got to meet, which, aside from, the esteemed Johnny Gamoff, I got to meet Mr. Racing and hang out a lot with Al Spire.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the legends of racing. And I got to go for multiple Indy 500s and sit with him in his trailer as he was doing his analysis. And there's literally, I don't know if there's hundreds or thousands of inputs that are coming into him of all this tire information as these cars are going, at absolute breakneck speed. And he is just sitting there taking all this stuff in. And it was a pleasure to be able to get to know characters like him as well.
Yeah, Al really had the respect in the racing community. One of my fondest memories is getting out there at, 5 a.m. in the morning and getting out to Indianapolis before the big cannon goes off to start the festivities, and just be out there and feel the energy and the excitement and everything. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Al did a wonderful job for our company, and he's doing well, by the way.
That's great.
Had lunch with him not too long ago. So you told me a little story about your father. Any more stories about your dad, your grandfather, or your great-grandfather that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, it's funny because, my father worked for the company for 12 years. And one of the things I loved about him is that he carried on the entrepreneurial spirit that my great-grandfather had once upon a time. And he had the courage and the willingness and the energy to go off and do his own thing, to go and blaze his own trail. So this is a picture of me and my dad.
Oh, I love it.
I'm sitting there on his desk. This is probably right around 1980. And this is at the Firestone Vineyard. And so here goes my dad, who was up at the Salinas tire plant once upon a time. He was out in Europe doing European sales, working internationally. And then all of a sudden just kind of says, you know what, I'm going to go do my own thing. It's not going to be tires. It's going to be something that I have a passion for. And I mean, imagine, and I face this every day as a young businessman. Well, young is a loose term, but it is when you have a legacy like Firestone, is that what you measure your success against? Is it against someone like, Harvey Firestone, who, it changed the way that people travel for the rest of time? I'm never going to be able to live up to that, but can I measure my success? Can I create my own path? And that's what he started, what my father did with Firestone tires, and then what my brother and brother-in-law did with Firestone beer. They did something totally on their own. And even though we can always look back and take lessons and inspiration from our ancestors and our family, but hopefully it lights a fire. It doesn't make you measure your own success against what somebody did, many, many years ago. Because you may not live up to that, but you can, obviously you can always be successful according to what your own bar is set.
Absolutely. Well, you've got three great people to follow and been very successful in your own career. But before we talk about that, I want to take you back to the July 4th weekend in 2008. Kimberly and I attended your and Ivana's wedding celebration. I remember it well. I remember like it was yesterday. First of all, there was a rodeo. You had to dress up in Western wear and stuff. That was really cool, with all kind of roasting of pigs and stuff. And then there was the wedding ceremony at the Episcopal Church with the beautiful ending, because it caught everybody off guard, where you hand out the song stuff for Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. And we all exited the wedding doing that, to the actual reception at the winery. You got to imagine this big oak tree, hundreds of years old, with chandeliers hanging from it. And then at midnight, you guys come out with sliders. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, who helped you with that? Was that all Ivana's doing there?
Yeah, that was a lot to do with my wife. She wanted to have she wanted to have an event that had, that was serious, that was reverent towards our relationship and to our faith, but was fun. And I think we accomplished both of those things. And the ceremony was very traditional. The exit, like you said, as we handed out song cards and everyone was singing at the top of their lungs, Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, and that carried over to the party that went until the wee hours of the night. I think we were picking out, groomsmen and bridesmaids out of the weeds for days after that. They got lost in the on the property. But it was so much fun. We had a blast, and it was great to have you there. And it meant a lot to have. I think we had like 300 people there, and they always say you don't have enough time to see every single person, but I'm glad that we had a chance to catch up, and it was a night to remember.
Best wedding I've ever been to. Seriously, best wedding. So you and Ivana now have 3 beautiful children, Adam, Shane, and Anya. And I recently was talking to Philip Dobbs, who headed up Bridgestone-Firestone marketing. He's retired now. He said, this is several years ago, that your oldest son, Adam, tried out for a Firestone TV commercial there in California. And it wasn't until after he was chosen to do the commercial that they found out his last name was Firestone. Do you know anything about that story?
I do. So we found out that my kids do a little bit of acting and modeling and such. My wife is a model and an actress herself. So we found out that he got a call back for a Firestone tire commercial. And what, it would have been an easy thing, I think, for me to call up the producers of the commercial, the casting agent, and say, just so you know, this is the great grandson of the founder of Firestone Tires. But if I would have done that, he wouldn't have earned it on his own. And he would have probably never forgiven me for that, because it would always be questioned. If you would have asked me that question, did he get it because his last name was Firestone? And right. I'm so proud that he never had to use that. And I hope he never does. I hope I never have to go and play that card, to go and say, well, the words that I never want to hear in my mouth, do you know who I am? That's the worst. And I want my kids to earn everything on their own accord, by their own skill, talent, and hard work.
No, that's very, very good advice. And so are the rest of your family, are they still doing, I see some ads and stuff from time to time on social media. They still, yep. And your wife does? She was down in Mexico doing a shoot down there, wasn't she?
Yep, been all over the place. And actually, we just got back on Saturday night. While we were talking and texting back and forth, we did a commercial for a cruise line. And so we were on a boat for Royal Caribbean called the Icon of the Seas. So it's the biggest cruise ship that's ever been built. It's a big, beautiful boat. We took a cruise out of Miami. We're goofing off in the Caribbean, and you'll probably see commercials coming up pretty soon. So they dragged me in there. So my character is middle-aged dad number 1, or number 2, probably.
That's awesome. So I got a few souvenirs on my desk here I'm going to show everybody. The first one is a bottle of Firestone Merlot wine signed by your dad, Brooks. See that? And
legend.
Yes. And how is your mom and dad? They were so kind to Kimberly and I when we went to the wedding.
They're doing great. They're doing awesome. And, they've got 14 grandchildren, and I think we're now up to maybe 7 great grandchildren. So their days are busy chasing, grandkids and great grandkids around. They love coming out to my son's soccer games and my daughter's musical performances, and so they're doing great. And I'll pass on your good tidings.
Please do. Now I also and I just went out and had to get some more because I ran out. This is your brother and your brother-in-law's 805 Firestone Walker, and it's infused with lime, by the way. This is unbelievable. I mean, this is top shelf. So how are your brother and brother-in-law doing with the Firestone Walker Brewing Company?
They're doing great. They started that business back in 1996, and they grew it from grassroots, ground up, and they're selling a lot of beer. And luckily for folks like you, they keep drinking it, they keep making it. So I'll tell you, like I said before, I'm pretty surprised that beer is still full. What is it, 9:30 on a Tuesday morning? So good for you. You showed good patience. You can have it after the show's over.
Yeah, that it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Kim and I have it's noon somewhere. That's what we do. But no, I buy it actually in Chicago, Nashville, obviously here in Arizona. So it's all over right now. So the other thing I noticed on social media, we're friends. I see for the last 10 plus years at least that you've emceed many and many charitable events. How did you get involved in this, and why are you so good at it?
Well, about 15 years ago, I started doing some MCing and auctioneering, and it was, I got approached to get paid to do it and do it as kind of a side profession. And I decided that I was going to do it just as philanthropy. So I don't charge a cent. I don't get any compensation for it. And I help out a whole bunch of organizations, mostly here on the West Coast. I do help a charity called HB3 Foundation out in Charlotte, North Carolina. I do about 25 to 30 events a year. And it's fun for me to be able to go and give a little bit back, learn about these organizations, focus mostly on child and family services, support the arts, and certainly education. So I've actually got an event coming up for Make-A-Wish Foundation here in a couple of weeks, which is obviously a national organization. So it's a fun thing to be able to do and to be able to give back.
Well, good for you, my friend. That'll come back tenfold for you. So, Andrew, you co-founded with your partner Stone Park Capital. It's an equity company dedicated to the hospitality industry. Your company, I believe, is now 10 years old. Is there a Cliff Notes version you could give our audience here of the ups and downs of starting your own company?
Yeah, real quick, it was, I worked for other people for a long time. And then a bit like my father, when he got that entrepreneurial bug, or my brother, when he got the entrepreneurial bug, I said, it's time to set out on my own. And so we started our first project in 2014. And knock on wood, here we are 10 years later and growing, and we got 6 hotels in the portfolio. And it's been a fun run, except for the COVID wasn't so fun for the hotel and hospitality business, but we survived it. And it has been a really interesting ride. And I'll tell you what, nothing makes you work harder than being your own boss. I mean, that lights the fire real bright underneath you to keep moving.
Well, congratulations. And here's to another 10, 20, 30 more years of success, sir. So, Andrew, I heard in 2006, you made a trip to Akron, Ohio. What was that all about?
Yeah. So 2006, wow. That was a celebration of the 50th anniversary of the interstate highway system. That was a Eisenhower project that was obviously a huge deal for Firestone tires, as it was, Harvey was always about getting people on the road, the trucking system. And when that whole interstate highway system, that just changed the way that products and goods got from point A to point B. So at the old executive building in Akron, Ohio, we had a celebration there. And I was there with Dwight Eisenhower's grandson, and he and I both received keys to the city. So if you want to break into Akron, I've got a way to get you in there. But one of the coolest things I got to do while I was there was to visit the original executive offices for Firestone Tires. I got to go see where my grandfather and my great grandfather had their offices. I got to go into the executive dining room, which was this amazing, just rich with history space where, again, I would have loved to be able to listen in on what was being discussed, and those innovators, those idea makers that were in that building. I mean, what a piece of history, and what a great thing that I got to celebrate all those years later.
Yeah, that's a cool story. Yeah, I remember Eisenhower paved the way for the Firestones and the Fords to get their vehicles on the road and create the interstate highway system. So Great story, man. Great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Andrew, I remember visiting in Dearborn, Michigan, where the Firestone homestead is there with the Edison and the Ford stuff. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so there is a amazing living museum, I guess you'd call it. And it has my great-grandfather's homestead. It's got Edison's laboratory. And it's kind of this like frozen in time capture of what life was like when these ideas were created. And so we were actually out there. Ironically, I've got some pictures here. I was out there with the whole family for a big family reunion.
Oh, yeah.
And there we are in front of the Harvey's home right there. And
beautiful.
And this is me and Raymond Firestone, who was the head honcho at Firestone for many years. And I think we were out there for his 85th birthday. It was amazing to be able to go back there and kind of see what was life like, and why were some of these ideas created. And my great grandfather Harvey, he was raised on a farm, and they're riding on those rigid frame tires, and you could see why a guy like him would say, let's see if we could just make those pneumatic. Let's see if we could make those a little more comfortable for farmers and drivers to be able to go and And that's, I think necessity is obviously a big motivator for invention. And for Edison and for Ford and for Firestone, that was it was born out of necessity.
Yeah, to my viewers out there who have not been there, I really encourage you. That's definitely a bucket list thing to go see that. And the movement in technology, both in tires and in cars and in light bulbs and everything, has really gone so far that I'm sure the founders couldn't even imagine where it's been today. So thank you so much for sharing those pictures, and thanks so much for sharing those great stories. And to be there with Raymond Firestone, that's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
Yep.
So I might have asked you this part of the way, but I'm going to ask you one more time because it's such an important subject. What does carrying on the Firestone legacy mean to you personally?
Yeah. That's a great question. So there's an incredible amount of sometimes it can be expectation, but I take it as responsibility to be a good steward, to carry the torch, and to show the respect to your family, people that have come before you, that have set the table, have given opportunity. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to match their success or realize their expectation. All that means is that you have to make sure that you are conducting yourself and representing the family in the best way you know how. Again, I try and do that through my philanthropy. I try and do it by raising good kids. And at the end of the day, the most important job that I have is my kids, is to raise empathetic, thoughtful children that will be good stewards for the next generation. And each of us as parents, if we do that, then we have been a success. So it's sometimes, late at night when I'm staring up at the ceiling and I've got bills coming due or we've got a mortgage coming up or whatever else, I think, God, am I going to make it? I think, God, am I ever going to, would Harvey be proud of me, today? But really, I have to stick to my expectations. And as long as you do that, or as long as I do that, I will sleep well at night. Again, as long as mortgage rates don't go too high.
Well, in the 20-some years I've known you, sir, you've come a long way, and I respect you for everything what you just said. That's okay. Very, very, very kind. So, Andrew, we did something recently in the last couple of years on my podcast. This is season 4, by the way, Johnny G and Friends. It's called Rapid Fire, where I'm just going to throw some things at you. First thing that comes off your mind, just shoot them out there, okay?
Yes, sir.
So, stick shift or automatic?
Stick shift for sure.
Okay. Racetrack, the best racetrack you ever visited?
Oh, it's my best and worst. It's Road America outside of Milwaukee. I loved it on my first lap. The second lap, I got intimately involved with a corner wall and had to have my race car onto the back of a flatbed and taken off the track. I was very disappointed, but it is an amazing track.
Is your cousin Nick still out there racing around and stuff?
He is. He's out. He's doing shifter carts. He's doing all kinds of stuff. That kid has a need for speed.
You tell him I said hello.
I will.
Skydiving or bungee jumping?
Neither. I don't like to put my life in the hands of anybody else. I don't trust anybody tethering me to a bungee cord nor pushing me out of an airplane. I will be very happy right here on terra firma.
All right, I'll accept that. Best golf course you ever played?
Ooh, Cypress.
Cypress
Point in Pebble Beach. Yep.
Yeah. All right, this is a real tough one now. It's kind of political. Wine, beer, or liquor?
Whatever you're serving, Johnny. If you're buying, whatever you're serving.
Okay, good answer. So last one, what's one bucket list item that you want to fulfill in the near future?
You know what? I'm actually going to be doing it close to your backyard. I'm hiking the rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon. So we're starting on one side of the Grand Canyon, hiking about 24 miles down through the valley and back up to the other side, staying the night and hiking back the other day. So that's one of my bucket list items that's coming up. I've got a list of things that I want to do. I've completed a half Ironman triathlon. I've done some marathons, things like that. But this is going to be another one coming up here in the next couple months.
Are you spending the night down in the bottom of the canyon there?
No, there's a lodge on the far side of the canyon. It's a little rustic, but I imagine by the time we get there, we leave at, sunrise, going to probably arrive about sundown. We'll be ready for the rack at that point. So we won't be worried about the Wi-Fi connection there. We'll be just looking for a good night's rest before we start the trip right back the other way.
All right. Well, good luck to you. That sounds really exciting. Those days of me doing that are a little bit older. I stick to about 3.5 mile hikes right now up on the mountain.
Good for you. Good for you.
So, Andrew, I want to thank you for being part of Johnny G and Friends. Take care of that beautiful family and stay healthy, my friend.
Thank you. And one more thing, just before I go, we talked about this at the inception of the show, but I do want to give my heartfelt thank you to people like yourself, all the thousands of Firestone representatives that are out there, dealers, guys busting tires, in the factory, all the people that have literally carried the torch for Firestone for all these years. I do get a swell of pride every time I drive by one of those iconic Firestone signs, and I don't take any ownership for it. I honestly don't. It's not mine. It's part of my family legacy. Certainly, I don't claim it as my own, but I do say that I take so much pride in the fact that people like yourself have taken it upon yourself to make sure that legacy is alive and strong and carrying forward. And it's an amazing story to tell my kids, and I hope they have the opportunity to carry that tradition on.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words. I've been blessed. Started in 1969, as you know, busting tires for $1.60 an hour. And, who knows where I was going to end up. I'm like you. I still wake up certain mornings, even now today, like, am I going to be able to survive? And I don't know, I think that's what keeps me driven. So thank you for those kind words. The company was made up of people that built relationships with our customers, and the importance of having you there during those times meant so much to see your face up on the stage. And, that made all the difference also. So again, thanks so much for taking time to doing this podcast. Take care of that beautiful family. Have a fun hike in Arizona. Stay safe, my friend. And I hope to see you sometime in the future.
Thank you, Johnny G. You're a good man.
Thank you, buddy. See ya.
You don't need magic to disappear for a while, because Firestone tires were built for ticking off mile markers. Firestone Destination LE3 tires for 70,000 miles of exploring. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.